The scent of coal smoke and wet concrete hung heavy over the ruins of Vienna, a persistent reminder of the recent cataclysm and the slow, grinding effort to rebuild. It was 1948, and the war was officially over, but the war for accountability had just begun, waged quietly in cluttered, damp offices against phantoms and paper trails. Jacob Roth, a man whose youth had been consumed by code-breaking and fear, now spent his nights staring at fragmented intelligence reports on a scarred wooden desk, his task the impossible, tracking the architects of atrocity who had vanished into the shadows. Roth was not a hunter by nature, but the sheer scale of Joseph Mengel's evil had transformed him into one. The name resonated through the post-war world, a chilling echo of medical depravity and casual destruction. Yet, despite the notoriety, Mengel existed only as a ghost, an ever-shifting coordinate in a labyrinth designed by the network of dedicated escape facilitators known ominously as Odessa. This organization was not driven by ideology alone, but by cold, practical logistics, providing false identities, funds, and safe passage south. They were the silent undertakers of accountability. The crucial lead arrived late on a Tuesday, slipped beneath Roth's door by an unseen operative. It was not a grand confession or an address, but a mundane receipt from a small, cash-only watch repair shop near Innsbruck. The receipt detailed the service of a high-end Swiss timepiece, paid for in newly minted American dollars. What made the slip significant was the custom engraving on the inside casing, 3 stylized, interlocking arrows, a signature marking used by a specific paramilitary escort unit known to have served Mengel in the final days of the war. This was not Mengel himself, but his shadow, the man managing his transition. Roth felt the familiar, cold surge of frustration mixed with fleeting hope. This receipt proved movement and resources. Mengel was moving, not hiding, traversing the porous, chaotic border zones between Austria and Italy, a route nicknamed the Ratlins. The network was efficient, perhaps utilizing the church, certainly exploiting the institutional exhaustion of the Allied occupation forces. Mengel was trading on human fatigue and systemic collapse. The pursuit was less about pursuit and more about archaeology, piecing together fragments of a deliberately buried history. Each document, each whispered name, carried the weight of hundreds of lives extinguished at the whim of a simple hand gesture on the Auschwitz platform. Roth stared at the receipt until the cheap ink seemed to bleed. The timepiece represented precision, order, and wealth, qualities antithetical to the chaos Mengel had wrought, yet essential to his continued survival. The realization settled heavily. The goal was not merely to escape justice, it was to rebuild a life of comfort and anonymity, protected by a dedicated, wealthy apparatus that viewed his survival as a victory over their conquerors. The first move had to be surgical, avoiding alerting the wider Odessa machine. Roth knew the repair shop owner would have been well paid and well briefed. Any direct approach would simply scorch the earth and push Mengel further into the untouchable depths of South America. The paper in Roth's hand was less a clue and more a ticking clock, indicating not only where Mengel's shield had been, but where they might be headed: Trieste, the bustling, murky port that served as the final European gateway to freedom. The hunt had been abstract, now it was geographical and perilously immediate. A profound sense of isolation settled over Roth. The world saw the monster, he saw the bureaucracy facilitating the monster's life, and he was nearly alone in trying to dismantle it, brick by invisible brick. The interrogation room was sterile, aggressively bright against the gloom of the Viennese police headquarters. It smelled of weak coffee and old tobacco. The watch repairman, Elias Voigt, sat rigidly, a small man accustomed to small transactions, now trapped in a very large one. Roth watched him from behind the two-way mirror, a silent specter observing the erosion of a weak man's loyalty to a ruthless network. Voigt claimed ignorance, reciting a rehearsed narrative about a tall, anonymous man, a foreign accent, and a generous fee. He spoke of watches and springs, refusing to acknowledge the implications of the 3-arrow engraving. Forensics had already processed the receipt, lifting latent prints, but the result was predictable, clean. The operation had been professional. However, the accompanying paperwork provided a small, unexpected anomaly, a handwritten note tucked inside the repair file referencing a special consignment, vintage 1935. The date was meaningless, but the word consignment was not. It implied a continued, structured delivery of goods or funds, suggesting a more permanent supply line was active, likely originating from Switzerland. Roth shifted focus, directing his team to investigate known Swiss financial conduits used by retreating Nazi officials. The search was vast, requiring cooperation with resistant banking institutions. Meanwhile, the pressure mounted from Allied oversight. They demanded results, viewing the failure to apprehend high-profile fugitives like Mengele as an embarrassing operational lapse. Roth fought back the political tide, convinced that impatience would only lead to exposure. The next tangible lead came from a disaffected former SS accountant captured near Linz. Under intense pressure, the accountant revealed the existence of a designated emergency fund, known internally as the Biolab Fund, established to support Mengele's post-war activities, specifically to allow him to continue his controversial research. The fund was sizable and managed by a shell corporation registered in neutral Spain, dealing in specialized medical equipment export. The revelation solidified the terrifying scope of Mengele's evasion. This was not a man scrambling for survival, this was a monster being actively funded to resume his work. The Spanish connection immediately raised political obstacles. Franco's regime was sympathetic to the fugitive cause, making extradition impossible without irrefutable proof and extreme diplomatic pressure. Roth felt the window narrowing, realizing that Trieste was likely not the final destination, but merely the immediate jump-off point for a journey much further south, into institutionalized immunity. The Spanish shell company offered a target, a potential choke point in the financial flow, but accessing it meant stepping outside the official jurisdiction, risking the entire investigation. The choice was clear: procedural safety or the slim chance of justice. The team decided on a covert operation targeting the Spanish shell company, Medicus Export. Roth assigned his sharpest operative, Markov, to pose as a disgruntled Swiss investment broker looking to move assets quickly and discreetly. The goal was simple: trace the Biolab Fund's direct withdrawal patterns. Markov traveled to Madrid, operating under a constant, crushing layer of deception. Back in Vienna, Roth's procedural investigation stalled. Elias Voigt, the watch repairman, was released due to lack of direct evidence, only to vanish within 24 hours. This confirmed Roth's darkest suspicion: the Odessa network was monitoring the investigation closely and was prepared to eliminate loose ends. The incident added a brutal, immediate layer of danger to Markov's mission in Spain. The Swiss banking inquiry yielded a tantalizing clue: 3 large transfers had recently moved from the Biolab Fund through Madrid to an account in Buenos Aires, Argentina. The recipient was listed only by a generic trust name, Fides Trust. The amounts were substantial, indicating long-term planning, not a quick flight. Markov, sensing the danger, pushed his contact within Medicus Export, an aging, nervous lawyer named Ruiz, for details on Fides Trust. Ruiz, under the illusion that Markov represented a safer future for the funds, finally conceded a crucial piece of information: the trust was managed by a former German physician who had emigrated years prior, living quietly outside Buenos Aires, a man with significant political connections to Perón's regime. The convergence of evidence, the 3-arrow insignia, the Spanish funding, the Argentine destination, created a clear, chilling picture. Mengele was not just escaping, he was being relocated to a friendly territory where he could live freely, potentially continuing his perverted practice. Roth sent an encrypted message to Markov: abort the extraction of funds, confirm the physician's identity, and evacuate immediately. The risk had escalated far beyond financial intrigue. Markov's confirmation arrived just hours before he was forced to flee Madrid. The manager of Fides Trust was Dr. Friedrich Kessler, a known pre-war associate of Mengele from the Institute for Hereditary Biology and Racial Hygiene. Kessler was the welcoming committee, the institutional anchor for Mengele's new life. The path was now fully illuminated, leading directly across the Atlantic. Roth realized the limits of European justice. The Allied forces held no effective jurisdiction in Argentina, and the political climate was openly hostile to extradition requests. The official investigation was effectively over, destined to become another cold file marked escaped. Refusing to accept this administrative defeat, Roth went deep into unauthorized channels, utilizing his old intelligence contacts. He bypassed the official bureaucracy, trading favors and classified information for intelligence relevant to covert operations in South America. He secured the details of a small, independent Israeli Mossad team operating in Buenos Aires, focused primarily on Nazi hunting, but severely under-resourced. This was a Hail Mary pass, a fragile alliance between exhausted veterans and an external organization driven by a deeply personal mandate for vengeance. Roth compiled a precise dossier: the location of Kessler's remote suburban property near Buenos Aires, the financial structures supporting Fidesz Trust, and a clear timeline based on the 3 transfers. He knew that the formal request for capture would likely take weeks, giving Mengele ample time to settle. The only way to stop him was immediate, unofficial action. The transfer of information was executed in a high-security back room of a neutral embassy in Bern, Switzerland. Roth met with the Mossad liaison, a stern woman known only by her operational call sign, Leah. There was no handshake, only a silent acknowledgement of shared, desperate purpose. Roth provided the physical file and verbally underscored the urgency. Kessler's preparations suggested Mengele's arrival was imminent, possibly within days. Leah absorbed the data, her eyes scanning the photographs of Kessler and the financial documents. She confirmed that their small team was already monitoring similar high-value targets in the region, but Mengele represented a significant escalation of risk and profile. Capturing him covertly in Argentina carried massive political and logistical danger. Roth emphasized the unique nature of the Biolab Fund, the clear intent to continue research. He argued that Mengele, if allowed to establish his base, would become nearly untraceable again, lost within the political protection of the regime. The window for intervention would close the moment he crossed the threshold of Kessler's property. Leah assured Roth the information would be actionable immediately, prioritizing the target over all others. The weight of the Austrian bureaucracy lifted momentarily from Roth's shoulders, replaced by the heavy, moral certainty that he had done all he could from his position of legal constraint. Weeks turned into a grueling month of silence. Roth received no official communication, relying instead on veiled, coded messages passed through the remnants of his old network. The tension in Vienna was almost palpable. The official file on Mengele remained open, stagnant, but Roth's internal clock was counting down toward failure or covert success. One cold morning, a single, unregistered telegraph arrived. It contained only 3 words and a geographical coordinate: target confirmed. Arrival imminent. The message was clear: Mengele had left Europe and was about to land. The Israeli team was moving into position. Roth knew that any aggressive move at this stage, an attempted arrest or forced confrontation, could easily result in Mengele's death, either accidental or self-inflicted, denying the world the public accounting and testimony demanded. Leah's objective, Roth understood, was not merely apprehension, it was preservation for trial. The final surveillance of the Buenos Aires location began under the harsh, deceptive light of the Argentine summer. The Mossad team, positioned discreetly, observed Kessler's compound, noting the increased security and the arrival of several unidentified, heavy-set men. The silence of the surveillance was broken only by the chirping of insects and the distant drone of the city. The moment of climax arrived not with violence, but with the quiet approach of a dark sedan pulling into the driveway. A tall, gaunt figure emerged from the back seat, moving with an air of practiced authority despite the years of flight. It was Joseph Mengele. As the figure stepped onto the soil of his new refuge, a simultaneous series of planned movements began. The Mossad team initiated their capture sequence, utilizing silent, non-lethal methods designed to secure the target swiftly and without bloodshed, ensuring he would face the judgment he had evaded for so long. The operation was textbook, precise, and swift. The aftermath was a blur of covert activity and deep international secrecy. Roth received a final, encrypted report months later. The operation had been successful, Mengele was secured and transported out of Argentina. However, the cost had been steep. During the extraction, a sudden, unforeseen medical incident occurred. The precise details were redacted, but the outcome was tragically clear. Joseph Mengele, the angel of death, had died during the transit, denying the world the public trial and accounting that had been the singular objective of the hunt. Roth sat in his Viennese office, the scent of fresh snow now replacing the coal smoke. The official file was closed, marked fate unknown, maintaining the facade of his continued evasion. Only a handful of people knew the truth: the monster was dead, but justice, in its traditional sense, had been cheated. Roth looked at the worn receipt for the Swiss watch, the 3 arrows now seeming less like a symbol of escape and more like a mark of futile effort. The system that protected Mengele remained intact, the Odessa network continued its work, and the dark money flowed. Roth had won the battle against one man, but the war against the legacy of impunity felt unending. He ordered the file sealed, the truth buried beneath layers of political expediency and operational silence, a chilling reminder that sometimes, even when the pursuit ends, true justice remains elusive. He turned off the desk lamp, the office plunging into the enduring, oppressive darkness of post-war Europe. The months following the operation settled into a sterile, bureaucratic quietude, far removed from the desperate urgency of the chase. Roth's office, now meticulously ordered, felt less like a center of action and more like a museum of lost opportunities. The official records regarding Joseph Mengele offered no true resolution, preserving the administrative fiction of his ongoing, successful evasion. This silence was the profoundest irony, a testament to the power of systemic denial over undeniable truth. Roth understood that the bureaucratic closure offered no solace. The hunt had never been about merely terminating a man, but about upholding the essential, non-negotiable principle of public accountability. Mengele's final demise, achieved through covert intervention but delivered by a sudden, fatal medical event, represented a victory of elimination but a failure of justice. He had faced no witness, no judge, no public accounting for the industrial scale of suffering he had orchestrated. The goal of dragging the monster into the glaring light of global scrutiny, to dissect the mechanics of his depravity and force the world to confront the consequences of its inaction, had been narrowly snatched away. The cost of this denial weighed heavily: the immense resources, the deep personal risks taken by the operative Markov, the uncompromising moral calculus of the Israeli team. All that effort had resulted only in a ciphered success, a truth locked away in secured government vaults. The true, lingering horror was the revelation that Mengele was merely a symptom. The real antagonists were the entrenched structures of impunity, the global financial networks, the political protection afforded by sympathetic regimes, and the unwavering logistical dedication of Odessa. These organizations, fueled by dark money and historical loyalties, continued to thrive, their foundations unshaken by the removal of one high-profile fugitive. The Biolab Fund, though temporarily disrupted, could easily be rerouted, the Ratlins re-established. Roth realized that while they had hunted a man, they had merely scratched the surface of a deep, global conspiracy designed to protect evil and rewrite history. Sitting amidst the stacks of classified documents, Roth felt a cold certainty that the vigilance could never cease. The pursuit of men like Mengele was a critical, immediate necessity, yet the enduring battle lay in dismantling the very architecture of sanctuary. It demanded not only detective work and courage but also an uncompromising moral integrity within the institutions tasked with upholding the law. The failure to secure a public trial was a lasting wound, a reminder that the forces seeking to evade consequence were always professional, always well-funded, and always ahead of the curve. The closing of the file was not an ending, but a pivot point. Roth knew his work, and the work of those like him, extended far beyond the pursuit of individual fugitives. It was a commitment to the grinding, often invisible effort of eroding the systemic tolerance for atrocity. The 3 interlocking arrows, once symbols of Mengele's protected passage, now served as a haunting emblem of the complex, unending warfare against complicity. Justice, Roth concluded, was not a singular event of capture or conviction. It was a tireless state of perpetual opposition to the silence that shields monstrous acts, a necessary and painful commitment that echoed across continents, demanding eternal vigilance.